Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1967. We're going to be taking a look at Petula Clark and she's going to be performing Downtown. So let's get Petula up on screen and see how she gets on.
Is making you lonely, you can always go downtown. When you've got problems, all the noise and the worry seems to help, I know. Downtown, just listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk where the neon signs are pretty. How can you lose? The lights so much brighter there. You can forget all your troubles.
And there we have it. So with this particular composition, it's one of those songs that got to #1 in the USA, sold over 3 million copies, but it is classic musical theatre in the way that it's been composed. That's Tony Hatch, who's just an expert at anything musical theatre in terms of throwing something together. But the way that this whole track ebbs and flows, the different departments that we go through, I want to analyse this song in particular in not too much detail, so you guys are going to get confused, but just point out a few things as to how it works and how it's so engaging for the whole performance. But also bear in mind that this particular performance is only about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes in terms of the song. The original song was just over 3 minutes in length, so it's one of those things that you always got in the 60s. Some of you would have noticed the similarities between Petula's voice and that of Julie Andrews, and they used to tour the UK together when they were kids, so they were singing, and I'm sure their technique and their sound rubbed off on each other. Even tonally, there is such a similarity there. And also, they both played the part of Maria in The Sound of Music, Maria von Trapp. So they've got such similar vocal qualities, and in order to play a part like Maria, but just any part on Broadway or on the West End that we have here in London, you have to have great vocal technique, because these songs are so demanding, and even when you do have great vocal technique, you can still come unstuck with some of those performances and those compositions, singing them night after night after night after night because they are so demanding. So Petula has that vocal technique that allows her to sing night after night and for it not to affect her vocal cords in a negative way. And that is all about the control of airflow and not overstraining and pushing for notes, but allowing the notes to happen with resonance. In this performance, Petula, again, one of those great singers, on pitch all the time. You have to be if you're going to sing musical theatre, because your pitch is so important for the backing. And there is a section in this song that is the pre-chorus where the vocals match the background melody that the orchestra is playing. And that is such a musical theatre thing to do. So if your pitch is ever so slightly off, your backing is an orchestra and they are perfectly tuned. So it means that they're not going to miss those notes. So if you miss them, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So you've got to be able to get your vocal cords to snap to these pitches as accurately as an instrument. And that's exactly what Petula does here. She also manages to keep that conversational quality to her voice, even though she's hitting pitches bang on and applying other vocal techniques. It's one of those things that will fly under the radar when you are watching musical theatre. That is such an important part, the connection with the audience, because you're not only trying to sell the story of a composition in terms of a singular composition, you're trying to sell the story of a whole theatre production, a whole 2 or 3 hour show. So you've got to be able to keep the whole audience on board with your vocal ability and that quality of having a conversation with them while you sing for 2 or 3 hours at a time. I am going to be breaking down this composition and talking about notes and scales and hopefully explaining it well enough so you guys know what I'm talking about. But throughout this song, we've got sections that just chop and change, and it isn't just a standard verse-chorus arrangement here. So there are so many elements to keep you interested. By the way, just talking about vocal techniques, have a listen out for Petula's use of vibrato and how subtle it is when she throws it in there. But also, right at the end of the song, you'll hear Petula hold on that last note of the song and then apply that vibrato right at the end of the line in order to give it the expression. That is what you're adding to the end of your notes when you use vibrato, and when it is well controlled and the frequency is nice and even, you're going to get such an authentic expression to the end of those notes. In compositions like this with musical theatre, you often have the orchestra hitting their crescendo and getting higher and higher and higher in terms of their pitch, and that gives you that emotional end to a performance. The guy that I mentioned before, Tony Hatch, he just is a master of writing musical theatre in terms of his compositions. So even in 1965, this is the way he writes. He is writing it with a view to make a story out of the composition, but sit it within a wider story. And this is certainly the vibe you get from this composition. It is not a pop song. It is such a journey from beginning to end. It's a really short song. Like I said, the original only 3 minutes, but there is so much in there. But let's get into analysing the song as to why it is so interesting the whole way through and how it is so melodic, because straight off the bat, we're starting in E here, which will be na. That should be an E. You can go and check it on your guitars or your keyboards or piano, whatever you're playing. But we've got our E. So the root note of our chord is but the melody of the vocal is coming in as a fifth. So we are not starting on that root note of the chord, we're starting at the fifth. So straight away we're being really interesting. The melody is different to what we're expecting. And just to explain what a fifth is, if you count through the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale as numbers, you can get your third, your fifth, any number you want, you'll be able to find out what it is. So I've gone, that's my E. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, do, re, mi, fa, sol, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5. That is my fifth. So if you've got the ability to sing through that do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale, just count along with that. And that is the major scale. That is what you're singing. That's what it refers to in music. So 1 is always your root note of the chord. It's always the first note of your chord, the lowest note. And then if you count all the way through, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, that last note is the same note that you started on, but an octave higher. So that will be an E as well. If you're starting on an E, go through that whole scale and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 8th numbered note, you've started again. And then it repeats over and over and over and over again. And that's where the octaves go up 1 octave, 2 octave, 3 octave, 4 octaves. It's just the same thing repeating over and over again. So hopefully you guys are still with me at some level, because when we take those 8 notes, or as we just found out that number 1 is the same as number 8 in terms of that scale, all of those other numbers or notes in that scale are what is being used for the melody of the song. But Petula is arpeggiating the chord, which means that she is taking notes from the chord, but she's jumping around. She's not just singing them in order, going from 1 to 8. She'll take different numbers. So she might go from 3 to 5, and then from 2 to 7. And this is what singing and composing and melody is all about. Taking notes from a chord and putting them in different orders to make it sound nice, because it's always going to relate to the underlying chord. Another really interesting way to look at the progression of a vocal melody and the journey that it takes you on is to imagine every note as a step. And I've said before about climbing the mountain. That's what you want to do with every composition, musically and vocally, is start at the bottom, and then by the end of the composition, you want to be at the top. You want to have reached that peak. So the melody, the way that it's been put together, try and see it as that staircase, because we're starting on that 5th. So we've got na 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 na, and it's just the same note being repeated over and over again. But then, na 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 na, we kind of went up a few steps there, and then we came back down again. And then, na 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 na. We went right up the staircase. It's like a jump that we had. Again, this is classic musical theatre in terms of needing the accuracy to hit pitches. I probably shouldn't be attempting it, and it's in Petula's range as well. But to give you an idea of this staircase and how the notes work, we are gradually going to be moving up this staircase, coming back down again, and then for the next part of the song, we're stepping up a couple more steps, and then for the next part of the song, we're stepping up a couple more steps, and we're doing that throughout the whole composition. And this brings us to the key change, because key changes are thrown in all the time to make it more interesting, even though nothing different is happening in terms of the music and the progression. All that's happening is you are being raised up one step. And by doing that, your brain is now wiped clean as to what it's heard so far, because all the notes you are now hearing, you haven't heard before, because it wasn't in that key. You were standing on the step below before, but now you're a step higher. So your brain starts taking all of these notes in as new information. It is almost like you've been climbing up this mountain and you've hit that peak. That is the end of your journey. But then, from nowhere, you've been put on a totally random place on the mountain that you don't recognize. So your brain is a little bit confused and is taking every part of this new journey as a whole new journey. You haven't heard it before. You haven't been here before. And that's musically what's going on in your head with key changes. And sometimes you'll find compositions that have 2 key changes or 3 key changes. As you guys will know if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, we get an octave between where we start with Petula's vocal on the B, and it's B3 that she's starting on if you want to go to your pianos. But then we have B4. That's the top note. That is the downtown that we hear in the chorus. So we've gone through that journey of an octave to reach that peak. Now, as soon as the key change comes in, we're just going up one note. It's just a half step. That's what it's called in music, but if you're not musical at all and you're imagining a staircase, just see it as one step that you've taken up, because now that means that the top note is now going to be one step higher because everything is the same. And that's exactly what happens. So after our key change, the top note that we hear from Petula is a C5. We have spanned within the whole song, beginning at B3 all the way through to C5, we get over an octave, and that's why it is so dramatic. And the amazing thing about it is the high note in this song is always the word downtown. So that is your peak of the mountain, is what the song is called. So it's been so well put together, not only arranged with the orchestra, but melodically with the vocal lines in order to complement that arrangement, but also take you on such a melodic journey by arpeggiating the chords, but gradually going up this staircase or climbing the mountain so that you reach that peak at the tagline of the song. If you're not sure what a key change sounds like, rewind it back to about 1 minute and 43 seconds, because that's where it happens in this performance, and maybe rewind it a little bit before that so you can hear it kick in. It will sound like you've taken a step up. There are so many things to point out about this composition and this performance that I'll probably be here all year if I was trying to cover everything. I'm probably going to do another video on Petula Clark, just to cover her career and all of that information that I'm not going to be able to fit into this particular video. But I also want to draw your attention to the elements of this composition that keep it interesting the whole time. Not only the melody over the top of the arrangement, but the elements of the song. It's going to be difficult to give names to these parts of the song because they are so different from each other. Throughout this whole performance, nothing is ever getting stale. And you'll find with songs, especially bands that haven't been writing for a long time, maybe school bands who might be 13 or 14 years of age, they'll write a song that has a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, and that's it. That's all that happens. There's nowhere else to go on that journey. So it tends to be the reason why a lot of bands and songwriters, when they're starting out, can't really take that journey very far because they only had 2 ideas and can't blend 3 or 4 ideas together. And that's always a major part of the great songwriters and composers, is that they probably weren't very good at songwriting when they started, but they practiced so much. They got really good at throwing together not 2 ideas, but 3 ideas, or 4 ideas, or 5 ideas, and getting all of those to blend together to take you on such an interesting journey and making them all relevant to each other musically. It's something that is mentioned about the Beatles, for example. Lennon and McCartney, the way that they wrote, they had 4 or 5 ideas all in the same song, and those songs only lasted for maybe 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. So you went on such a magical mystery tour when you listened to some of those compositions that you had to rewind it instantly back to the beginning to go on that journey again because it was so interesting. And this is always the case with the massive hits. It's the combination of fantastic writing, great arrangements, those chord progressions, but then pairing that together with top talent musically, but also vocally here, to have somebody like Petula who can give you that range and take you to that place emotionally right to the top of the mountain, and it allows the composers to write songs that they otherwise wouldn't be able to write because you haven't got the talent of the singer that can take it to that place. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!